Welcome to Surviving AI.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today is Monday, January 26, 2026.
Good to be here.
And I have to be honest, looking at the news this morning, it's hard not to feel a certain heaviness.
Oh, I know. It's a constant drumbeat.
It is. The headlines are just dominated by these massive, scary numbers about artificial intelligence in the job market. You've probably seen the figure floating around everywhere.
The 92 million number.
92 million jobs potentially displaced. And that's not just a statistic, That is 92 million households suddenly wondering what the future looks like.
Absolutely. It's deeply personal for a lot of people.
It feels like the whole story right now, the prevailing narrative, is entirely focused on what's being taken away. You hear white-collar recession, automation of entry-level work. It's a lot to process.
It is incredibly heavy, and you're right. That fear is it's the loudest story in the room right now. And it should be. We're witnessing a fundamental restructuring of the labor market.
Right.
And whenever that happens, whether it was the Industrial Revolution or the Internet age, that immediate reaction, that anxiety, it's completely valid. But, and this is why I'm actually, believe it or not, excited to be here today.
Okay.
There is a parallel story happening, a huge one. While everyone is staring at the demolition site, watching the old jobs get knocked down, there is this massive construction project happening right next door that almost nobody is talking about.
And that construction project is our focus today. We are doing a deep dive into the Surviving AI with Carlo Thompson material. Specifically, we're looking at the episode titled AI Dispatch, the Oversight Economy.
A great title. Very fitting.
It really is. And before we get into the weeds, just a quick reminder to our listeners, if you like what we do, please subscribe and like the show. It really helps us keep finding these signals in the noise.
It really does.
So the Oversight Economy, it sounds official, maybe a little bureaucratic.
It does have that ring to it, yeah.
But the premise here is that there's an explosion of careers designed specifically to govern, audit, and guide these AI systems. Is this a real thing? Or is it just some corporate fluff to make us feel better about the robots taking over?
It is very real. And it's growing faster than almost any other sector in tech right now. Believe me, we're not just talking about a few ethics consultants on the side.
Okay.
We are mapping a whole emerging landscape of careers that they didn't really exist 5 years ago. We're going to look at AI ethics officers, compliance managers, prompt engineers, AI auditors.
All these new titles.
All new. And the goal today is to really figure out who these jobs are actually for, what they pay, and spoiler alert, it's a lot, and whether they can actually, offset that huge 92 million displacement number you mentioned at the top.
Okay, let's start there. Let's start with the money and the scale. Because, usually when I hear governance or compliance, my brain immediately goes to cost center.
Sure. The Department of... No.
Exactly. The people you have to hire to avoid getting sued, but not the people who actually drive growth. How big is this market, really?
Well, that's the fundamental shift. It's moving from a cost center to what I call a survival center.
A survival center. I like that.
The projections show the AI governance market hitting $3.7 billion by 2028.
$3.7 billion.
Now, I know $3.7 billion might sound small compared to, say, the GPU market or something massive like that. But you have to look at the trajectory.
The growth rate.
The growth rate. We're seeing a compound annual growth rate, a key AGR, of roughly 40%.
Wow.
In the business world, 40% growth it's rocket fuel. That's not keeping the lights on spending. That is, we need this yesterday kind of spending.
At 40% CAGR is wild. I mean, that rivals the early days of cloud computing.
It's that level of urgency.
But I want to push back a little bit on this. Is this growth driven by companies actually, wanting to be responsible? Or is it just panic hiring? Because there's a stat in the IAPP and Credo AI 2025 survey that stood out to me.
I think I know the one you mean.
And it wasn't exactly a glowing review of how ready companies are right now.
You caught that. That is probably the most alarming statistic in the entire data stack we looked at.
So what did it say?
The survey found that only 1.5% of organizations feel satisfied with their current AI governance staffing levels.
Wait, hold on. Say that again.
1.5%.
1.5, not 15. 1.5.
1.5, which means if you flip it, 98.5% of companies are looking around their conference rooms and realizing we do not have the people to handle this.
They're completely exposed.
Utterly. They're scrambling. It's a massive, massive talent gap. And when you have a gap that wide where the supply is practically zero and the demand is basically universal, You have incredible leverage if you're a job seeker.
That explains the numbers I saw on the job boards.
Exactly. It explains why we're seeing over 14,000 listings on LinkedIn right now for AI governance roles. And then, even more specific, nearly 400 listings just for AI ethics officers on Indeed this month alone.
Okay, so the demand is just off the charts. It's a feeding frenzy.
Yeah.
But why now? I mean, why is January 2026 the tipping point?
Yeah.
ChatGPT had its big public moment years ago. Why didn't they hire all these people back in 2024?
That's the key question, because in 2024, it was still very much the move fast and break things phase, the Wild West.
Right, the fun part.
The fun part, yeah. Now, we have firmly entered the if you break things, you will be destroyed phase.
Okay.
And this job, boom, let's be very, very clear. It is not driven by corporate altruism. Companies are not waking up on a Tuesday morning and saying, you know what, we should be more ethical because it's the right thing to do.
So what's driving it?
They are hiring because they are terrified. Terrified of regulation and of liability. We're in the middle of a regulatory tsunami and the wave is starting to hit the shore.
And looking at the timeline in the sources, the biggest wave in that whole tsunami, it seems to be the EU AI Act.
The EU AI Act is the big stick. It's the global standard setter. It actually entered into force way back on August 1st, 2024, but these things always have a grace period.
Or ramp-up time.
Exactly. And the reason we are talking about it with such urgency today is that grace period is rapidly evaporating.
Okay, right. I see the dates here in the notes. But before we get to the specific dates, can we just talk about the penalties for a second? Because I think that explains the panic you're talking about.
Let's do it, because the numbers are staggering.
The sources mention fines up to 35 million euros.
Or, and this is the part that gets everyone's attention,
7% of global annual turnover.
we need to just pause on that 7% figure for a moment.
It's a huge number.
In compliance history, we're used to fines being a cost of doing business, a big bank budgets for a few million in fines, like a regular driver budgets for a speeding ticket. It's an annoyance.
Right, it's just part of the P&L.
But 7% of global turnover isn't a speeding ticket, it's a seizure of the engine. For a company like Amazon or Microsoft, or even a large retailer, that could wipe out their entire profit margin for the year. Or more.
So this shifts the whole conversation in the boardroom.
Completely. It goes from legal annoyance to existential threat. And that right there is why the hiring budget for these roles is suddenly almost unlimited.
And I'm assuming this has that Brussels effect we always hear about, where European laws end up becoming the de facto global policy.
100%. It has what's called extraterritorial reach. It doesn't matter if your headquarters are in Austin, Texas, or in Tokyo. If you sell your product or service in the European Union, you have to comply. Full stop.
So you have American companies scrambling to hire people who understand these European laws.
Exactly. Because they simply cannot afford to lose access to that massive market.
Okay, let's look at the calendar then, because there's a specific date looming that seems to be the forcing function for all this hiring we're seeing right now.
It is. It's the big one.
We already passed one deadline, the ban on unacceptable risk AI back in February 2025. Things like emotion recognition in workplaces.
Right. The most egregious stuff got banned first.
So what happens on August 2, 2026? Why is that the date circled in red on every lawyer's calendar?
August 2, 2026 is the red letter day. That is the date when the obligations for high-risk systems become fully enforceable.
And high risk sounds intense. It makes you think of nuclear codes or autonomous drones.
It does.
But looking at the list in the source material, it seems much more mundane, much more common.
That's the trap. That's what so many companies are realizing. High risk, under the EU definition, covers a huge swath of the regular economy. It includes AI used in employment.
So if you use an algorithm to scan resumes,
That's high risk. It covers education, so student admission software. It covers credit scoring, critical infrastructure. If you are a bank using an AI model to decide who gets a loan, you are operating a high-risk system.
so by August 2026, what do you need to have in place?
You need to have all your documentation in order. Your human oversight protocols have to be established and working. Your bias audits need to be completed and documented. And you can't start doing that in July of 2026.
No, it's a huge undertaking.
You need to hire the team now to build the entire infrastructure to be compliant by then. That's why the hiring is happening today.
Okay, so that explains the rush. And it's not just Europe, right? The US is doing its own thing, which, from the looks of it, sounds messy.
Messy is a very polite way to put it. We don't have one single federal law like the EU does. We have a patchwork, a confusing patchwork.
What are we looking at stateside?
You have the Colorado AI Act, which becomes effective very, very soon, June 30th, 2026. You have California's Transparency and Frontier AI Act that just kicked in on January 1st. You have New York City's Local Law 144, which is all about bias audits for hiring tools.
So if you're a national company,
You can't just follow one rule book. You need a team of people just to navigate this complex map where what's perfectly legal in Denver might get you sued in New York City.
it's a compliance nightmare and a job creation engine.
The best kind of nightmare for job seekers.
Okay, so the why is fear. Pure and simple. Fear of fines and legal fragmentation. Let's talk about the what. The sources call these the new-collar jobs.
Right.
Let's unpack these specific roles because I think a lot of listeners might assume these are all just for computer scientists with PhDs.
And that's the biggest misconception.
The first one on the list is the AI ethics officer. Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Is this a real job? Or is this just a person companies hire to write a nice, fluffy mission statement and then completely ignore?
That is the cynicism I expected. And look, 3 years ago, you might have been right. It might have been a token role, some ethics washing.
Right.
But today, it is operational guardianship. Think of it this way. You have the engineering team who wants to build the fastest, smartest, most capable model possible. They're hitting the gas.
Full speed ahead.
Then you have the legal team who just wants to say no to everything to avoid any possible risk. They're slamming on the brakes. The AI ethics officer, they're the one driving the car.
So they're the ones actually steering, making the moment-to-moment decisions.
They have to be. Their responsibilities are incredibly concrete now. They aren't sitting around in an ivory tower debating the philosophy of consciousness. They are in the trenches, conducting bias audits on real systems. They're developing ethical frameworks that engineers can actually code against.
So they translate principles into practice.
Precisely. They are answering the tough questions like, we know we can build this tool to predict employee attrition, but if we do it, does it inadvertently discriminate against older workers or women returning from maternity leave? And if it does, how do we fix it before we ship it?
And the market values this role highly.
Incredibly highly. The salary data is pretty eye-opening. Entry level is sitting around $75,000 to $95,000.
Which is a great starting salary.
A fantastic start. But when you get to the senior or director level, it just jumps significantly. We're seeing salary bands of $160,000 to $240,000 plus bonuses.
Wow.
And some of the sources even cite up to $369,000 for top governance roles.
And what's the background for these people? Is it tech?
This is the most interesting part. They often want backgrounds in philosophy, law, or sociology, but combined with tech literacy. You don't have to be a coder, but you have to speak the language.
That is a vindication for every liberal arts major who was ever told their degree was useless.
It really, really is. If you can parse complex logic and understand second-order societal impact, you are suddenly, in 2026, more valuable than a mid-level coder.
Amazing. Okay, let's move to the next role, the AI auditor. This one sounds a bit drier, a bit more traditional. Is this just about checking boxes on a form?
You know, it sounds dry, but I'd think of it less like checking boxes and more like red teaming for algorithms.
Ooh.
An AI auditor is the inspector. A financial auditor looks for math errors or fraud in the books. An AI auditor is actively trying to break the algorithm.
To find its weak spots.
Exactly. They are testing for bias. Is this lending model denying loans to people in a certain zip code more often than others? They're validating performance. Does the model work as well in the real world as it did in the lab? And unlike traditional IT audits, which are all about security and uptime, this involves human-centered design principles.
That phrase, human-centered design, it pops up a lot in the sources. What does that actually mean in an audit context?
It means looking beyond the code to the outcome for the human being at the end of the chain.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's say an algorithm works perfectly mathematically. The code is clean, the logic is sound, but it accidentally denies healthcare coverage to a specific group of people because of a subtle flaw in the training data it was fed. A traditional IT audit might completely miss that.
Because the code works.
The code works, but an AI auditor is trained to look for that societal harm, for that negative human outcome. They ask, who does this hurt?
And the pay for playing detective with algorithms.
It's strong. Senior levels are typically between $130,000 and $188,000, and certifications are huge here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, things like the CISA, which is a traditional IT audit cert, or the newer certifications from the IAPP are correlating with higher pay. It's a role for people who love details and finding hidden flaws.
Okay, the third role. This one has been buzzy for a while and honestly a bit controversial. The prompt engineer. I feel like I see people arguing about this online constantly. Some say it's the most important job of the future. Others say it's a temporary bug until the AI gets smarter. What does the data actually say?
The data says the market is still booming, but the role itself is morphing. It's evolving.
How so?
Well, first, the market valuation is projected to hit $3.43 billion by 2029. That is massive. So the money is there.
It's not a fad.
It's not a fad. But here is the nuance. The translator role, the idea of someone who just optimizes inputs to get the best outputs, is quickly becoming a skill, not just a standalone job.
Right, like typing. You don't get hired as a professional typer anymore, but you absolutely have to know how to type for almost any office job.
That is the perfect analogy. Most marketing jobs, coding jobs, research jobs will soon just expect you to be good at prompting an AI. However, and this is a big however, there is still a very high-end slice of this market.
Specialists.
The true specialists, prompt engineers who are working on fine-tuning massive foundational models or building complex system architectures with multiple AIs. They are pulling in huge money, sometimes $300,000 plus at top tech firms. But for the average person listening, prompt engineering is something you add to your resume, not the only thing on it.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, finally, let's talk about the AI governance and compliance manager. This feels like the glue holding this whole operation together.
This is the architect. This is the person who connects the legal requirements, all those scary EU fines we talked about, to the actual day-to-day engineering workflows.
So they build the system.
They build the system. They are the ones creating the internal bureaucracy that allows the company to innovate without blowing itself up. And I know bureaucracy is kind of a dirty word.
It is.
But in this case, it's the safety rail on the side of a cliff. You need it.
And I noticed a really specific salary bump mentioned for this role in the source material regarding dual expertise. Can we break that down?
This is a golden nugget for anyone listening who works in privacy or compliance today.
Okay, I'm listening.
If you have expertise in both privacy, so think GDPR, CCPA, and AI governance, the median salary is nearly $170,000.
Okay, that's a strong number.
But if you only have the privacy expertise, it's around $123,000. That is a nearly $50,000 premium just for learning the AI layer on top of what you already know.
That is the most actionable piece of career advice I have heard in a very long time. If you are in privacy, pivot now. Learn AI.
Absolutely. It's the biggest salary arbitrage opportunity on the market.
Okay, so we've covered the roles. It's a fascinating new landscape. But I want to address the learner in our audience. The person who is smart, curious, maybe a little anxious, but they don't know how to code in Python.
Right.
I see all these technical sounding terms in the notes like model drift and hallucinations. If I don't know how to fix those things in the code, can I really get one of these high-paying jobs?
This is what I call the no-code revelation. And honestly, it is the single most important takeaway for your listeners today.
Okay.
The OECD Future of Work data is explicit on this. 72% of AI-exposed job vacancies require management skills. 67% require business process skills. They are not asking you to build the neural network from scratch.
You don't need to be the mechanic who can strip down the engine.
No. You need to be the traffic planner. A city's traffic planner doesn't need to know how to rebuild a car's transmission. They need to understand flow, safety, rules, and what happens when a car crashes. You need AI literacy, not AI coding.
Let's define that literacy, though, because it's a bit of a buzzword. You mentioned drift earlier.
Yeah.
If I'm in a job interview and they ask me about model drift and I just stare at them blankly, I'm not getting the job.
Fair point.
So explain it like I'm 5. What is drift?
Okay, simple analogy. Imagine you train an AI to approve mortgages based on economic data from 2020.
Okay.
In 2020, interest rates were at rock bottom and the housing market looked a certain way. Now it's 2026. The economy is totally different. Inflation, interest rates, everything has changed. If that AI is still making decisions based on the patterns it learned from 2020, it is going to make a lot of bad loans.
Because the world has changed.
The world moved away from the model's training. That's drift. The model itself isn't broken, it's just out of date. An AI auditor or governance manager needs to be able to spot that and say, hey, we need to retrain this model with new data, but they don't need to be the one to write the code to do the retraining.
That is a great explanation. It's a business concept, not a coding concept.
Exactly.
And hallucinations, we hear that one all the time.
That's even simpler. That's when the AI confidently makes things up.
Like a lawyer using ChatGPT and it cites a court case that doesn't exist.
The classic example. You, as the manager, need to know that this is a fundamental risk of the technology. And so you need to put guardrails in place like mandatory human-in-the-loop checks for any legal work to catch it. Again, you manage the risk. You don't necessarily fix the underlying math that causes it.
So we're looking for what the sources call T-shaped professionals.
Precisely. That's the ideal candidate profile. The top of the T is your broad knowledge. Business, governance, risk management. The vertical bar of the T is your deep, specific expertise in one area. Law, human resources, finance, healthcare.
So if you're an HR expert who knows employment law inside and out,
and you spend a few months learning the basics of AI bias and fairness frameworks, you are the perfect candidate for an AI governance role in an HR department. You're invaluable.
I want to touch on education barriers, though. The sources say a lot of these jobs prefer or even acquire master's degrees. Is that a hard gate that's going to lock a lot of people out?
It looks like a hard gate, but I think the gate is unlocked if you have the right key.
And the key is experience.
Is his experience. Look, yes, 77% of new AI jobs might list a master's as a preference. But here's the reality. This field is so new that nobody has 10 years of experience in it. You cannot hire someone with 5 years of experience in Generative AI Act compliance because the act didn't even exist 5 years ago.
Right, so experience in a related field is the equalizer.
Experience is king. If you have 5 years of experience in healthcare compliance, knowing HIPAA inside and out, that is worth more to a hospital hiring for an AI governance role than a fresh master's graduate who doesn't know how a hospital actually runs.
So the easiest path for many people might be internal.
That's the fast track. Internal mobility. Look at your current company. I guarantee you they are setting up an AI task force or a governance committee. Raise your hand. Volunteer. Move from your current legal or compliance or HR role into that AI-focused slot. That's how you make the pivot.
Okay, let's break down the industries quickly. Who is hiring the most aggressively for these roles? Financial services seems to be at the top of the list.
Financial services is the adult in the room when it comes to this stuff.
Why is that?
They've been doing this for decades, just with a different name. They have a regulation called SR 11-7. It's all about model risk management.
SR 11-7. Sounds riveting.
It's incredibly dry, but it's incredibly lucrative. It basically says if you use a computer model to make big money decisions, you have to document it, test it, and prove it works first.
They've had these processes for years.
Banks have been doing this for complex spreadsheets and algorithmic trading models since 2011. For them, swapping in AI is just the next logical step. They have the muscles for it, and they pay, well, often 15 to 25% higher than the baseline because they value stability over everything else.
And what about healthcare?
Healthcare, the stakes are just so high, it's literally life or death. The Department of Health and Human Services has its own mandate for risk management coming up in April 2026. If an AI misdiagnoses cancer or a system leaks sensitive patient data, the liability is practically infinite. So hospitals, insurers, and health tech companies are hiring very, very rapidly.
And government?
Government is all about public trust and also increasingly civil rights. We're seeing roles being created for civil rights and equity specialists within AI teams. The U.S. Department of Defense has a chief responsible AI officer. These are incredibly influential roles shaping how the state uses this powerful technology.
Okay, I want to pivot back to where we started.
The big number.
The big, scary 92 million displaced jobs number. We've talked about this booming oversight economy, all these fascinating, high-paying new jobs. But I have to ask the hard question now. Is this a fair trade? Can these governance jobs realistically replace the millions of administrative and customer service jobs that are being lost? My cousin, who works in a call center, can he really become an AI ethics officer?
We have to be brutally honest here. And the answer is no.
No.
It is not a one-to-one swap. The displacement is hitting what economists call routine cognitive work data entry, scheduling, customer service. The automation probability for some of those roles is like 80–90%. The creation, as we've discussed, is happening in high-skill oversight and strategy. There is a massive skills mismatch.
So we're seeing a kind of white-collar recession at the bottom end of the market and a simultaneous boom at the top.
That is exactly what's happening. And that gap between the two is where all the societal pain is going to come from. It involves a massive amount of churn. A displaced call center worker cannot just walk into a $180,000 AI governance role without significant, and I mean significant, reskilling and support. That's the difficult reality.
Is there any good news in the macro numbers at all?
There is. The World Economic Forum, in their data, predicts a net positive outcome eventually. They see 170 million new jobs being created globally versus 92 million displaced by the year 2030.
So a net gain of 78 million jobs.
A net gain. But getting from here to there is going to be incredibly bumpy. It's not a smooth transition. That churn is going to feel very disruptive for a lot of people.
The sources mention the Centaur model as a potential bridge during this transition. What is that? I'm picturing a half-horse, half-human.
That is the metaphor. And it's a powerful one. It's the idea of augmentation, not replacement. The data actually backs this up, showing that 40% of firms right now are focusing on using AI to make their human workers better, faster, smarter, to create augmented humans, or centaurs.
And how many are focused on just replacement?
Only 12%. So the focus is much more on collaboration right now.
So instead of firing the writer, you give the writer an AI tool so they can write 5 times faster and spend their time on higher-level strategy and editing.
Exactly. But that writer now needs to learn a new set of skills. They need to know how to verify the AI's work, how to check it for bias, how to prompt it correctly to get what they need. Their job shifts from purely writing to editing and oversight. They become a manager of the machine.
So let's land this plane with some actionable advice. If I'm listening to this right now and I'm feeling a mix of anxiety and maybe a little bit of excitement, and I want to position myself in this oversight economy, what do I do today?
Okay, let's break it down into 3 paths. Very concrete. Path 1. If you are a legal or compliance professional listening right now, you are in the pole position. Your homework is to go and read the EU AI Act summary. Read the NIST AI Risk Management Framework from the U.S. government. These are your new Bibles. Master them.
Look, have to.
If you are a tech professional, a coder, an engineer, stop obsessing over learning the newest, hottest coding library for a second and start learning ethics and policy. Learn how to explain complex technical concepts to non-technical people. That is your new superpower.
And the third path, the generalist.
If you are a generalist, a project manager, a business analyst, an HR partner, you need to focus on that AI literacy we talked about. Become the translator between the tech team and the business side. And for you, I would seriously look at certifications.
Are certifications actually worth it in this space?
Yeah.
Or are they just money grabs from organizations trying to cash in?
It's a great question. In a mature field, they can sometimes be money grabs. But in a brand new field like this, they serve as a credible proxy for competence.
A signal to employers.
A very strong signal. The sources specifically mention the IAPP's AIGP certification. That stands for Artificial Intelligence Governance Professional. Because university degrees are lagging so far behind the reality of the market, having that cert on your LinkedIn profile proves you've done the work and you know the frameworks. It will get you interviews.
That is really concrete advice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap this up. If our listeners are going to take away 5 things from this deep dive, 5 key takeaways, what should they be?
Okay, number 1. The market is real. This is not a drill. We're talking $3.7 billion growing at 40% a year.
Right.
Number 2, the pay is high. Senior roles are hitting $200,000, even $300,000 plus because the talent is just so scarce.
Okay, what's 3?
Number 3, the gap is your opportunity. Only 1.5% of companies are satisfied with their staffing. That means 98.5% of them are desperate to hire people like you.
Number 4.
Number 4, skills over code. Remember the OECD data. 72% of these jobs prioritize management and business skills over pure coding ability. You need to be a critical thinker, not just a programmer.
And finally, number 5.
And number 5, the deadline, August 2, 2026. The EU AI Act is the forcing function. It's the meteor heading for Earth that is making all of this happen right now, not in some distant future.
It really feels like this oversight economy is the new frontier.
Yeah.
It's not about stopping AI, is it? It's about building the guardrails to make it safe enough to actually live with and do business with.
That's it, exactly. The best way to predict the future is to prepare for it. And right now, in the age of AI, preparation means governance.
Well said. That is it for this deep dive into the oversight economy. We really hope this gives you a clearer map to navigate the massive changes happening in the job market.
I hope so too.
And join us next time for episode 10. The title is Business Ownership, the Only Job AI Can't Take. It's going to be a fascinating discussion on what might be the ultimate hedge against automation.
I'm really looking forward to that one. It's a big topic.
It is. Until then, keep learning. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Join us next time on Surviving AI.